Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. I honestly don't have much to discuss before we get into it today. It's been pretty quiet in my life lately, which is probably for the best. No need to bore y'all. Oh, other than an unhoused guy started following me and scraping his knife against a brick wall before he asked for a light, and I said, "No, I'm sorry, sir." And thankfully, he just turned around and scraped the other way. But I love it here. Today, we are covering a mystery dating back over 100 years. A renowned Canadian painter is found dead, but the question is, how did he die? This is the mysterious death of Tom Thomson. My name is Eli, and this is Murder in the Morning. My sources for today come from a CBC article by Jesse Kinos Gooden, a Reader's Digest Canada column, and the rest I will put down below. Thomas John Thomson, aka Tom Thomson, was a landscape painter in love with the great Canadian wilderness. Born in Claremont, Ontario in 1877, Tom hadn't even begun his painting journey until age 34 in the year 1911. His early childhood was mainly spent just outdoors. Wikipedia states, quote, "He was taken out of school at an early age, possibly due to a lung condition. This afforded him time to explore wooded areas and develop a deep appreciation for nature. He spent much of his time on walks with his grandmother's first cousin, Dr. William Brodie, who is a well-known entomologist, ornithologist, and botanist. Subsequently, he developed a love for both fishing and hunting, although he eventually gave up the hunting after he shot a deer and, quote, "the look in its eyes was way too human." Okay, do you want to hear the story of the single time I killed a deer? I despise hunting now, and that mainly stems from boredom, but also because it feels unfair today. But I used to hunt, and I would skip this if you don't like animal death. I was maybe 11 or 12 years old and legally couldn't hunt on my own yet, so I set up with my dad in a stand overlooking this massive snowy field in northern Minnesota. He had a rifle and I a shotgun with a few slugs. After a few hours, my dad sees a deer way off in the distance and takes a shot, striking the deer right in her gut. She takes off into the forest, and we begin tracking. At some point, our uncles decided to join us as the deer took us towards their stands and eventually passed. And after an hour or so, we finally saw this deer again. My uncles say to my dad, "Let the kid take the shot, blah, 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 you know." And so I'm looking down the barrel of this shotgun, and the only thing I can see is this doe's butt. I didn't know what else to do, so I take the shot. She bucks up and runs off into the distance. Again, we follow her tracks until she's within range, and again, I look down the barrel, and all I can see is deer butt. I shoot, putting yet another slug in, hopefully the other cheek, or maybe the same cheek, whichever hurt less. She bucks up and runs off again. I'm thinking, oh dear God, this poor creature. She's got 3 bullet holes in her body at this point. The next time we see her, she's lying down in the snow, panting heavily, surrounded by a pool of blood. I'm slowly approaching her in case she kicks or jumps up again, and I ask the adults in the area, I almost said in the room, "Well, now what?" And one of my dumb uncles goes, "Shoot it in the head." I'm like, what? Excuse me? How old? But I was already in so deep and I felt that I couldn't turn back at that point. I placed the barrel against this doe's head, looked away, and pulled the trigger. I have no recollection of what the aftermath was because there was no way I was about to look back. So, yeah, I don't go hunting anymore. I shot a deer 3 times. That was enough for me. Back to Tom Thomson. According to Britannica, encouraged by fellow designers in a Toronto commercial art firm, Thomson began to paint. And in 1913, after 2 years, he and his colleagues, who would later become famous painters themselves, went to Algonquin Provincial Park to paint. This park is nearly 3,000 square miles, or 7,600 square kilometers, a seemingly endless stretch of rivers, lakes, rolling forests, moose, bear, any artist's dream. After this first trip, Thomson was hooked. He spent part of each year in the park as a woodsman, a guide, and a painter. His pictures or paintings depicted lakes, mountains, and trees in vibrant colors. This man loved being surrounded by nothing but wilderness, and from 1914 onward, he started spending entire springs in the Algonquin area. I mean, just listen to this example. Quote, in 1917, Thomson returned to Canoe Lake at the beginning of April, arriving early enough to paint the remaining snow and the ice breaking up on the surrounding lakes. The paintings became his own visual diary of the day, morphing into a series that he described as, quote, a record of the weather for 62 days, rain or shine, or snow or dark, or bright, end quote. That is a level of dedication and just immersiveness that I would love to achieve someday. Soon, Tom yearned for more. He wanted to see what else the world had to offer. According to Wikipedia, in a May 1917 letter to his brother-in-law, he wrote, quote, I may possibly go out on the Canadian Northern Railway this summer to paint the Rockies, but have not yet made all the arrangements yet. If I go, it will be in July and in August, end quote. Sadly, Tom would never make it to the Rocky Mountains, as his life was tragically cut short. On July 8, 1917, 39-year-old Tom Thomson departed by canoe at 12:30 p.m. from Shannon Fraser's dock, an owner of a small lodge that he often stayed at. He told witnesses that he was headed to either West Lake or to T Lake Dam. Tom pushed off, paddled away, and no one ever saw him alive again. That same afternoon, only hours later, Tom's boat, his canoe, was found flipped over and floating in Canoe Lake, the lake that he had often painted previously. Quote, his overturned boat was found containing a gallon of maple syrup, some jam, and a rubber sheet, but the painter's body was nowhere to be seen, end quote. 1 gallon of your finest maple syrup, sir, for my canoe trip this afternoon. A weeks-long search ensued, and on July 16th, 8 days after he disappeared, Tom was found floating face down in the same waters of Canoe Lake. The initial doctor examining Tom's body noted that he had a 4-inch bruise on his right temple and fishing line wrapped 17 times around one ankle. The doctor would officially rule his cause of death as an accidental drowning, but many people then and over the last century have shown distaste for this theory, and for good reason. 1. The fishing line. The single scenario that I could think of while researching this is a murderer attempting to weigh their victim down by tying something heavy to them and then throwing them in the water. And 2, if this was an accident, if Tom slipped and hit his head and drowned, his body would have probably shown up days earlier had it not been snagged on something on the bottom. And 3, somebody rushed to bury this body. The very next day, it was in the ground, before the family even had a chance. And then, 2 days after that, he was exhumed by his older brother, who was like, and reburied in a family plot near Owen Sound. But besides this string of peculiar events, his cause of death, drowning, has not changed. Over the years, a multitude of theories have been brought up, ranging from suicide to murder to conspiracy of the government, which, of course. But his friends and family say he wasn't depressed. His paintings were gaining attention in the art world, starting to make some money. I mean, he brought a gallon of maple syrup and jam with him on his canoe trip to enjoy. He had plans. And as for murder, this one does hold a bit more water. The owner of the lodge that he had often stayed at, Shannon, and whose boat he took off from, was alleged to have beef with Tom, and even fought him physically in the days leading up to his death. But what evidence is there? None, really. And so a drowning, it will remain. I came across this bit near the end of my research and debated not even sharing it because I believe it takes away from some of the mystery surrounding his death. But sharing is caring. According to Wikipedia, quote, David Silcox and Harold Town have pointed out incorrect evidence being used to justify the belief that Thomson was murdered. Chief among these is that Thomson's feet were found tangled in wire. This claim is a misinterpretation of Robinson's 1930s observation that the body had a carefully bound fishing line around a sprained ankle, which Silcox and Town write was a common remedy for arthritis or a sore joint. Silcox has proposed that it's easy to imagine Thomson standing in his canoe, casting a fishing line, losing his balance in the process, hitting his head, and falling into the water, only to drown. And over the years, eyewitness accounts and stories change and evolve so often, who knows of how much of the original story still stays intact. Maybe the whole thing is a government cover-up. In the years since Tom's death, his artwork has gained worldwide recognition. In 1967, the Tom Thomson Art Gallery opened in Owen Sound. In 2002, the National Gallery of Canada staged a major exhibition of his work, giving Thomson the same level of prominence afforded to that of Picasso and Renoir. In 2009, the highest price achieved by a Thomson sketch was titled Early Spring Canoe Lake, painted in 1917, which sold in 2009 for $2,749,000, or in 2024 equal to $3,776,000. Quote, one example of the demand Thomson's work has achieved is the previously lost painting titled Sketch for Lake in Algonquin Park, painted in 1912. The painting was discovered in an Edmonton basement in 2018 and went on to sell for nearly $500,000 at a Toronto auction. End quote. Jesse Kienos-Gooden of CBC summarizes his story and untimely death beautifully. Quote, the details around Thomson's death are as murky as the depths of the lake that claimed his life, as facts have compounded with rumors, gossip, and speculation over the decades in an epic game of telephone. In the process, it's created the closest thing this country has to a myth, a story based in fact, but with just enough evidence to prevent any one definitive explanation about what happened to Thomson that summer day on Canoe Lake. What's so fascinating about Tom Thomson is that there is just enough to frame the story, but not enough to solve the mystery. End quote. And that, my friends, is the mysterious death of Tom Thomson. I truly love this story, not only because I hadn't heard it before, which is always nice, but because it leaves the ending open for speculation in a way that doesn't totally piss me off, you know? Like, deep down, I might believe that he just drowned by himself, but I want to believe he was killed. And I got to scroll through a bunch of beautiful Canadian landscape paintings along the way. He was a very talented person. I hope you will enjoy that story as well. Sans the murdering a deer in the head part. Thank you for taking the time today. And if you'd like some more true crime, stick around after the music. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Hello. Today, I attempted to bring you a bit of refreshing news in light of all the terrible events taking place, most notably the recent Georgia school shooting, which is simply awful. My heart goes out to the victims' families and the survivors of that evil act. How is it still happening? But this is titled Missouri Man Arrested in 1993 Murder of Young Indianapolis Woman of CBS News. Quote, a Missouri man has been charged in the 1993 rape and slaying of a young Indianapolis woman after his DNA matched evidence found at the crime scene and on the victim's body. Dana Shepard, who was 52, of Columbia, Missouri, was arrested on Friday in Missouri on murder, felony murder, and rape charges in 19-year-old Carmen Van Huss's killing. Shepard was being held without bond on Wednesday at Missouri's Boone County Jail, and an extradition hearing is to be held in the coming days. Deputy Chief Kendall Adams of the Police Department's Criminal Investigations Division said on Tuesday in a statement that he hopes Shepard's arrest brings Van Huss's family, quote, some measure of peace. He added, for 31 years, the family of Carmen has been searching for answers and justice. Carmen's father found her dead in her Indianapolis apartment in March 1993 after she failed to show up for work. An autopsy found that she'd been raped and was stabbed 60 times. Carmen's brother Jimmy told CBS affiliate WTTV, quote, we hope after all this time people understand just how violent my sister's murder was. She was raped and stabbed over 60 times, and my dad had to see her like that. Blood everywhere, blood on the walls. His daughter was naked, lying there alone. He had to see that, and it changed him forever. End quote. Eli, this was supposed to be refreshing. DNA evidence was found on her body, and blood was found on a paper bag in her apartment, but the case eventually went cold. In 2018, the department submitted a sample of DNA found at the scene to a specialty company. Last year, detectives used that company's genetic genealogy analysis to identify Shepard as a suspect. Then, they collected DNA from Shepard in February and found that it matched the DNA found on her body and the paper bag. Investigators say Carmen and Shepard lived at the same apartment complex at the time she was slain. Her brother Jimmy told WTTV that he hopes the arrest in his sister's murder brings more attention to other cold cases. Quote, we want all of them to get this treatment, he told the station, and by that, I mean the DNA genealogy treatment. We would love a bill, a law, a procedure, something in Carmen's memory to get the attention other cases deserve. End quote. That we do. DNA can be a magical thing. And I don't know how you'd go about it, but a bill or a law or procedure, like he said, to just at least somehow fund the DNA testing. Because I know in a lot of cases, that's where families get stumped. They can't afford that specialty genetic genealogy analysis. So yeah, anything close to that would be amazing. You are very correct, Jimmy. And that is all I have for you, delectable human beings today. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening in. I truly appreciate it. I am off for a coffee and to stop and peruse Goodwill. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you.